Thank you very much, Ken, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today. I hope that you're all healthy, and I want to thank you again for all the outstanding work that you've done in this very difficult time where we've transitioned everything we do to a different modality. And I think that we can all be proud of how U of M-Dearborn has responded to this as a leader and best in class for sure. Today, what I'd like to do is talk about something that I know is probably weighing on a lot of people's minds. And I know that in the past, Vice Chancellor Evans and his team have done budget presentations for the community, but I think it's taken on a new degree of significance in this current time because things have changed so dramatically and our revenues and expenses have all changed. So what I'd like to do is to talk about how we build our budget. I have a short presentation that I would like to share with you. And let's see here. Oops. I'd like to share this. And I know that people are coming to this presentation with all different levels of experience and background. So I'm hopefully going to take nothing for granted. And what I'd like to do is explain how our budget is built and the thinking that goes into it and how we're organizing our thinking around this. And then I hope that that will answer a lot of the questions that you may be thinking of. But the first thing I want to do is say that this is not a prelude to any major announcement with regard to RIFs or cutting programs or anything like that. This is a presentation that is geared as a primer on how the budget works at the University of Michigan-Dearborn. And university budgets are quite complicated, and I hope that our team has assembled a presentation that will shed some light on this sometimes a mysterious item that we call budget planning. So what I'd like to do, excuse me, I just need to move something, okay. What I'd like to do is first talk about how our budget process works, how we build a budget. I want to talk about our revenue, what comes in, and our expenses, what we have to pay, the uncertainties around our current budget and future budgets, the principles that we're using to make our decisions, the financial savings measures that we've already put in place and what we're thinking about. And finally, I'd like to look at our FY21 budget in a target fashion and provide a timeline for our decision making and information gathering. So if we look at our budget process, oftentimes people are very confused about what is driving what. And in good organizations, the budget supports the strategy of the organization. The strategy is not driven by the budget. So we identify the strategy that we want to employ, and then we build a budget to support our strategy. We use an integrated planning and measurement approach. The budget is not a static object. It is changing virtually daily, sometimes even more than once in a day when information is coming in, and we have to adjust as the fiscal year proceeds. Our decisions are supposed to address where we want to go and who we want to be, what type of institution we want to be known for, and that is our strategy. Budget reflects our priorities. As Vice President Biden has often said, if you want to tell me what your priorities are, show me your budget. So talking about priorities without the budget support behind them is vacuous. And we're trying to build our budget to support our priorities. The budget, as I mentioned, is only a snapshot in time. It's an ongoing, continuous process, and it responds to new information and conditions continuously. And what we want to do with our particular budget at U of M-Dearborn is really not be a central control of the budget. We want to empower our leaders so that the power, the control, and the decisions are really pushed out to the units. And these units would be responsible for their revenue generation as well as their expense control. Building the budget as we just talked about, means that we have to establish our priorities based on our mission, and then we have to look at what our budget assumptions are. And these assumptions will relate to things like what we assume the state is going to appropriate for us. It looks at enrollment trends. It looks at expenses that may be looming. So we're going to estimate both our revenue and expenses. We're going to identify and hopefully prepare for contingencies that are outside of these best guess targets of ours. Then in our case, we want to go to the Board of Regents, and in other universities would be the Board of Trustees, for approval. And then once we gain approval, we implement the budget at the budget turnaround point, which is the end of our fiscal year, and we monitor and modify as appropriate. And that's just a general landscape of our budget. So at Dearborn, we benefit from, in this particular case, in this crisis, from the fact that we only have really two primary sources of income: net tuition and fees and state appropriation. We have relatively small secondary sources, which is our research and grants, our development or philanthropy activities, and auxiliary revenue, which we do not have a lot of auxiliary revenue. For instance, parking could be considered an auxiliary revenue, and Ohio State had such a large parking enterprise at one point that they sold it to a private entity for $500 million. We don't have anything that provides that type of auxiliary revenue. Now, at other universities, they both benefit and can be hurt by other significant sources of revenue. For instance, residential colleges have residential life revenue, and they also have expenses. We are the only fully commuter campus in the state of Michigan, public commuter campus. Although we have the union that's across the street, that's a private entity, and we do not have any residential life that's organic to our organization. We also don't have large proportions of out-of-state students. And when universities have large proportions, they can benefit from the out-of-state revenue that comes with that. But we are now not hurt by losing that out-of-state revenue. Again, we don't have large auxiliary revenue. We do not have a large, on the scale of Ann Arbor or anywhere even near that, research enterprise. So we don't have a large indirects. We don't have a large athletic program that has revenue associated with it. And of course, we don't have an academic medical center. So while sometimes I lament the fact that Ann Arbor has all these terrific sources of revenue, in this particular case, we don't have to deal with the loss of these sources of revenue, which is something that happened in the last month and is looming in the future for a lot of universities. So what I'd like to talk about is our total revenue. And our revenue is broken down into two categories: our general and non-general funds. Those are the two categories. So when we look at this, our general funds are funds that we bring in and we can use discretionarily to run the university. So our primary source, as I mentioned, of general fund revenue is our tuition, which is $131 million, our state appropriation, $26 million, indirect cost recovery, $1 million, investment from short-term investments, which is about $1 million. And then we have non-general funds. Non-general funds are funds that are earmarked and they have primary uses, and we cannot deviate from the uses that we gathered them for. So for instance, federal financial aid, Pell Grants, we have to use it in the fashion that the Pell Grant program was identified. Direct research funding, direct research funding goes to the PI, and they have to be used for the grants that they were written for. Auxiliary and departmental funds for specific programs, and investment and endowment income that is restricted is a non-general fund. And of course, gifts is a similar way here. But I do want to point out that, as I mentioned before, our research enterprise is very small. Last year, we brought in about a little less than $5.5 million. And out of that, our indirect cost recovery is only 1.1 million. That comes out to about 26% effective F&A rate. So the reason it's less than what our stated F&A rate is for federal grants is because we have a mixture of grants that come in with different F&A rates. So our effective F&A recovery is only about 26%. That does not even cover really the cost of operating these the research program. So it's being subsidized, of course, by our general fund. Now, I say that because the more federal funds we bring in, the higher our F&A rate is, and the more of that can be recovered and cover our operating expenses. And this is why large research organizations that have a lot of federal money can do well in terms of covering their general operating funds. So our total revenue for the university is a little less than $185 million. If we look at this in a pie chart formation, you can see that the majority of our revenue is tuition and fees. This is for general fund now, because this is the budget that we present to the regents. They are only interested in our general fund budget. So we have about 131 million. It makes up a little more than 82% of our entire general fund budget. And the majority of the remaining budget is state appropriation, 16.5%. And you can see the indirect cost recovery is de minimis, as is the investment and other income. Now, if we look at our non-general fund revenue, you can see that that is the large majority of that is the federal financial aid, or the Pell Grants. And then we have sponsored programs and endowment and auxiliary and gifts. But these funds are already spoken for, so they can't be used for anything but the purpose for which they were acquired. So if we look at our general fund expenses now, so that's where the money comes in. We have general fund coming in, and we have non-general fund coming in. Non-general fund is already spoken for. General fund, we can appropriate for different uses at the university. So if we look at our expenses in the general fund, 65.2% of the general fund is salaries and benefits. Another 13% is financial aid. 3.3% is debt service. Now, let me just say that that is very low for debt service. The common rule of thumb for debt service for universities is somewhere between 5 and 8%. So we are significantly under leveraged in this category right now. And again, this is to our benefit in this particular crisis situation. And then supplies and others, that includes travel and other support, is 18.5%. So that is our general fund expenses. If we look at the same general fund organized a little bit differently, we can see that out of all of our general fund, almost half goes to the colleges, to the 4 colleges, 46.3%. So the colleges rightfully get the lion's share. Another 13% goes to financial aid, as we just talked about. Campus overhead, that includes the debt service, U of M recharge. This is the fee we pay to Ann Arbor for some of our support, which they give us at a significant discount, such as general counsel services, or facilities support, or HR support, or procurement. That we pay them a certain amount. We have some leases, and we centralize our benefits. So under campus overhead, benefits for the personnel that are in the central administration are included in there. And then we have business affairs that includes police, financial, HR, facilities. They're listed, enumerated on the right hand side. And we have the provost's office that has a lot of units in it as well: academic affairs, enrollment management, library, student affairs. And then we have, of course, the colleges are listed discreetly on the right-hand side if you want to look at that. And at the bottom of the list is the chancellor's office, and rightfully so, we're a small operation. And there are other units in the chancellor's office, such as OMI and the labor center. So those are also included in the chancellor's office. That is really where we are looking at our revenues and expenses. This is how the money comes in. It primarily comes in from tuition and state appropriation. It primarily goes out to salaries and benefits. Now, what we don't know, where our uncertainties lie, is we're not sure of what the state appropriation is going to look like. The state has indicated that they have a $3 billion shortfall for this fiscal year, and they're projecting at least a $3 billion shortfall for the coming fiscal year. Our fall enrollment is still up in the air. We will not know what it really looks like until September, when the students actually arrive on campus. But as an indication, we do know that international students are going to have trouble matriculating to the United States. So we depended heavily on international students for our graduate programs, and this is going to be a shortfall that we're projecting. Right now, we're thinking that our undergraduate FIDIAC enrollment actually could be up as much as 1%. We've had over 4,000 new applicants compared to previous years because of our relationship with Ann Arbor and the Common App, and and all the hard work that Melissa and her team are doing. So we actually think we could be up about 1% in incoming undergraduate students, but we're looking at a decrease of about 20% in graduate student revenue. And then, of course, there's the impact of COVID on other revenue and expense streams. So how is COVID going to impact philanthropy, for instance? Most people have been affected in some way or another by COVID, and it would not be unreasonable to think that their giving might be reduced. And then there are expenses. We may have to do physical modifications to our classrooms or incur testing expenses. And then, of course, another uncertainty is the closure of our current budget cycle. So the state has not given us our final payments on the appropriation for FY20. Because they're experiencing a shortfall right now, we may have those final payments at risk, and we're not sure of what that's going to mean. And what we're projecting for next year is, because of all these uncertainties, and we've done a lot of bracketing and a lot of modeling, we're projecting a shortfall of somewhere between, on a very optimistic side, $4.6 million up to $20.2 million. So when we're thinking about how we're going to manage our budget and what the principles we want to use, it's a good idea for us to determine our principles first and not try to determine the principles while you're making the decisions. So these are the principles that our leadership team has agreed on are important to us to contextualize and bound our decision-making process. First, as I've said many times, our overarching principle is mission first, people always. So we want to adhere to what is important to us, and we want to take care of of all the folks that we work with to the best of our ability. Health and safety is something that we do not want to compromise on. We want to focus on our core mission and competencies. We cannot afford to go off into areas that are not part of our core mission or that we don't necessarily have strength in. We want to support and enhance our strategic enrollment strategy with Melissa and her expertise coming to campus and her team really rethinking how we can best leverage the terrific education as a tool to attract more students, our education at Dearborn as a tool to attract more students and increase our net tuition revenue and improve their ability to complete on time and leave and get jobs afterwards. We want to make sure that whatever decisions we make are looking towards the long term, both in efficiency and maintaining the excellence for which we have been known and we want to continue. So we don't want to be efficient and become mediocre. We don't want to be excellent and then cannot afford the excellence. We have to make sure that we find that level, that common ground. We want to be data-driven, not anecdotally driven. So we're looking for a lot of data to drive our decisions. We want to work collaboratively with everyone who's got expertise and ideas that can contribute to this, and making sure that we're looking at holistic solutions across the campus. We want to be transparent, which is why we're doing this presentation. And we did our town hall earlier, and we'll continue to do these town hall meetings. And we want to communicate, and communication is a two-way street. I want you to hear from us, but we want to hear from you and have your ideas. And that's why we're going to have a Q&A at the end of this. And hopefully we'll have additional town hall meetings. We're actually thinking about having a town hall meeting that is unstructured and is just Q&A. So you can submit your questions, and we'll spend the entire time answering those questions. Some of the things that we've done to date is we've increased our strategic admissions effort and financial aid leveraging. Melissa's has developed some great strategic ideas on how to really improve our yield of students coming in. We've frozen salaries and we've frozen hiring. As you know, the senior leadership has taken pay cuts. And in addition to the pay cuts that the senior leadership have taken, we've actually had faculty members write to us and said that they would be willing to contribute as well. And I'm very honored and thankful for their generosity. We've significantly redeployed our employees to make sure that that we're using everybody to the extent possible, so that everybody feels fully engaged. And we've also redeployed some of our folks in Michigan medicine that have helped out there. We've postponed and reduced construction projects, and we've reduced non-personnel budgets such as travel, supplies, events hosting, and other items. So this is what our general fund budget looks like. Our FY20 general fund budgets, that's the year that we're in right now, is $159 million. We're projecting reductions in the general fund budget of about almost $5 million. And that is because we're expecting our overall net tuition revenue for this year to be down about $1 million. And we're expecting for this coming year to be down about $1 million. And for this coming year, we're expecting a 15% reduction in our state appropriation. So right now we're at 159. For next year, we're projecting a reduction in our revenue of almost $5 million, which brings us down to $154 million, or a 3.1% reduction in our revenue. In addition to our revenue losses, we are also expecting that our student financial aid is going to increase by almost $2.5 million. And there are a lot of reasons for this. A lot of our students and their families have been hit hard by the COVID crisis. We want to invest in making sure that once we bring them here, we can continue to support them so they graduate. Melissa has developed a new strategy to help these students arrive and be successful here. And this is part of us making sure that our primary mission, student success, is fulfilled. We're also going to be asking academic units and central funding units to reduce their budgets by 5.2 and 5.5% respectively. And again, as I pointed out in an earlier slide, we're going to ask the units to accommodate these reductions in the ways that they best see fit. So these are going to be permanent reductions. These are not one-time reductions. So they are going to have to readjust their operations to accommodate these across all of the units, both on the academic side and on the central funding side. And you'll see that because of this, we will be able to reduce our total budget by about it's almost $8 million. So this is what we're targeting here. Our revenue is going to go down. We're going to cut expenses. So we're going to be reducing our total budget by about we're going to increase our expense reduction by almost $8 million. Our total revenue is going to decrease by almost $5 million, and it's going to balance out so that our revenue and our expenses balance out at 154, and that incorporates the increase in student financial aid. So our budget timeline is that in March, we had to make some quick and early decisions. We had some freezes, salary reductions, we eliminated travel. April and May, we started building. We had been building the budget, but we had to change a lot of things. In April and May, we did a presentation to the regions. The regions are taking time to consider all three campuses' budgets. They're going to vote on the budgets in June. They're going, and after that, we will hopefully implement the budget at the budget turnaround at the 1st of July in our new fiscal year. We will not know what our net tuition enrollment looks like or net tuition revenue looks like until September. And that's another decision point. Hopefully we will have either accurately or underestimated our net tuition revenue. And the state appropriation is still in play. And unfortunately, we don't have a timeline for when the state appropriation is going to be decided. So with that, I thank you for your attendance. I would be happy to answer any questions, and I can stop my presentation and turn it over to Ken as MC.
Thank you, Domenico. Great presentation. So just a reminder for those that are on the webinar, there's a Q&A icon along the bottom. I know some questions are coming in. Thank you. I'm going to start with some of the questions that we received in advance. And so, Domenico, the first one's going to be to you. There were a lot of questions from the campus regarding or relating to salary cuts, job elimination, and other benefits that have been temporarily suspended during this pandemic. So I did forward to you, all of the various questions related to this topic, and I'm hoping you can just spend a little time going through that list and answering questions related to the current measures that are in place that are impacting our salary and our benefits, or could impact our salary and benefits.
Yeah. So let me just say that, and I mentioned there have been some salary reductions of the senior staff and others who have voluntarily done it. Right now, we do not have any plans for additional salary reductions. In terms of salary, bargained for unit personnel will continue to get their increases as they were bargained for, and faculty that are promoted or tenured will also get an increase this coming year. So not everyone is going to have a salary freeze. The bargained for and promoted and tenured faculty will have salary increases. But as of right now, we do not have plans to reduce salary. And we're going out of our way to look for efficiencies in our operation to make sure that we are staying true to our core mission, our core competencies, and we're trying to protect as many people as we can, as long as everybody is doing their job efficiently and doing it well.
Some of the questions that came in, there were, I think there may be confusion about the retirement match. Currently, there haven't been any changes to the current matching program. Can you speak to that, where that may be on the list?
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. So a lot of schools have already announced that they're going to suspend their retirement match as an interim measure. That is on the books as a topic for us to discuss, for sure. Our retirement match, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, is about $7 million. Is that correct, in that ballpark?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so it's about $7 million. If we did that, it would be only a one-time stopgap measure. If we saw that we could save $7 million and then we would see revenue come back. And if it was something that we were accommodating only for a short period of time, that would be something that we would put on the books and to talk about to protect other cuts, but right now it's only one of the options that has been put on the table, but right now we have no plans to do that.
Another related question on this topic, as we know, the university has suspended the U of M tuition reimbursement program. M-Healthy has been suspended. Any idea when those could be reinstated?
Yeah, I would say as soon as possible. As soon as we regain our financial health, I want to reinstitute all the great perks that have made this place such a great place. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible. We do not want to be profligate just because there are resources there. We want to be efficient. We want to be focused on our mission and our competencies, and make sure that we're doing the best job we can.
So hopefully, I know we're not being rewarded for being active and healthy, but hopefully the campus is still exercising and getting outside with the weather break.
You are rewarded for being active and healthy. It is an internal reward.
Absolutely. So a few questions came in, like if faculty and staff have suggestions for cost-cutting measures, how do they communicate those up to the administration?
Yeah, I would be happy if individuals have ideas or groups have ideas, if you could just email me directly at chancellorgrasso@umich.edu. I would love to get creative ideas that we can use that protect our well-being and look at the holistic success of our university.
And actually that email address is chancellor.grasso@umich.edu.
Yes, thanks.
Would send a bad signal if they bounce back, right?
All right.
Sort of related question, beyond the town hall, and we are thanked for this, how do we plan to continue to engage faculty and staff in a collaborative and shared plan for addressing budget issues during the pandemic?
Well, I'm really committed to this issue of collaboration, transparency, and communication, as you know. So we will continue sending out our Friday updates as topics evolve or decisions are made. They will be sent out as soon as possible. And if we reach very sensitive points, hopefully we'll have more town hall meetings and we'll all be engaged. The provost is working very closely with the deans to make sure that the deans are working with their colleges to address a lot of these issues as well. Again, this is part of our strategy of trying to push out all the decision making to as close to where the decisions are made as possible, which I think is the most efficient way of doing this. And as I mentioned, I hope we can have another town hall where we're just doing questions and answers, and we can actually maybe do it real time as well.
This question comes up a lot. University of Michigan is a big enterprise. There's 3 campuses, there's a medical center, there's a very large athletic program. To what extent, to what degree does a deficit in one of those areas impact the other ones? And I think the big one is Michigan Medicine, for example. It's been in the media reports about how much money is being lost, not only there, but in health systems across the country. If they're running a major deficit and things are bleak there, how does that roll down to Dearborn?
Well, that's a good question. And I know that they certainly have borne a large portion of this budget crisis that we're in right now. But they also are bearing that because they were preparing themselves for an onslaught and to do really yeoman's work on addressing the crisis, and they were prepared for it. Unfortunately, they paid a cost for that, and this cost now is being borne primarily by the individual units. So Michigan Medicine is taking on their responsibility for their budget shortfalls. They are reducing they are suspending their contribution to their retirement plan. Their senior leadership has taken significant pay cuts as well. They've suspended travel. They are suspending internal research funding. They're doing a lot of things that are addressing their particular shortfall. Ann Arbor is addressing theirs. We're addressing ours, and Flint is addressing theirs. So we are essentially a University of Michigan, but each campus has its own operating imperatives and budgets and responsibilities.
This is a question. This is an interesting question. So given the large portion of our revenue that comes from tuition and fees, has there ever been a discussion about moving the start of the fiscal year to October 1 instead of July 1, so there's less guesswork in respect to the budget? And I think not only would that impact tuition, but the state's also on a fiscal year that starts in October. So maybe Jeff, I think that's an interesting question. I don't know
It is an interesting question. We would still not know about tuition and fees until the students actually arrived on campus. So if we move the date, we're still not going to know until they actually arrive. We're trying to work this out because most universities have a larger deposit that's required. So they have a good handle on how many people are actually intending to arrive. We, 500 or sometimes even more dollars. We only require $50. So a lot of students may deposit and then may not arrive, but Melissa's working out ways that we can accommodate the financial situation of our prospective students and still try to get a better handle on how many students are going to arrive. And that'll help us do our projections. But there are a lot of things that have been put on the table, change in academic calendar. Some schools are starting earlier so they can end earlier because they expect a return of COVID in the winter time. So there have been a lot of things. And Sue has been working with her team on developing plans for the fall, as we mentioned, along with Laura Drabchek, who's working with the EOC with plans for the fall as well.
Cool. Sue, this one might be best suited for you. How likely is the replacement of lecture 3s and 4s with lecture 1 and 2s due to budgetary considerations? Sue, you're muted. We want to hear you.
You think by now I'd know how to do this, but yes, I was to say it's not being considered at this point, not least because it would not be in the best interests of our students, and that's a priority we have to protect. Budget should not be the primary driver of decisions about who teaches courses. It should only come into consideration after those decisions are made and when available. We also recognize that 3s and 4s typically bring a sort of a special kind of level of knowledge and expertise and add value to our campus through the ongoing work that they do with our students. So it would be unwise to let them go because their contributions are not easily replaced. Expertise, ability, and performance, so in HR, language, EAP, relevant to the assignment in question is the primary basis for instructional decisions, and the review of such factors will follow the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement.
Question, is the union a source of revenue even in a small way? And Jeff, maybe that's direct for you.
I'd be happy to take it. Actually, it's the exact opposite. We leased 15,000 square feet, and it costs us about $300,000 a year in lease fees. And we have 3 years to go on a 10-year lease of that. So it does not bring in any revenue for us. It costs us money.
Next question, can the university make a commitment to not start new debt financing building projects for, let's say, 5 to 10 years and build only what can be paid for by fundraising?
Are you directing that to me or to Jeff?
Anyone that wants to take it.
So can you just repeat that again?
Absolutely. Basically, can the university stop debt financing for building projects for maybe 5 to 10 years and only build things that we can afford through fundraising?
So debt financing is always, or not always, but often a very smart way to finance buildings because we go in with Ann Arbor that has a tremendous bond rating, and we can get very low interest rates. So it makes sense for us to leverage the money in markets that we can get low interest rates to do the financing, especially if we're going to get a large portion of it from the state. Right now, we don't have, except for the ELB. Is that the only debt financed project that we have, Jeff?
No, we have a number of previous projects that are on the books.
Okay.
that come off after 10, 15, 20 years.
Right, that are coming off. But even so, as I mentioned, our debt ratio is only about 3%, which is much lower than what it is at many universities, which a common number is 5 to 8%. So that would be a good way that you could be a good financial steward of resources and leverage the money to finance projects. But where capital, one of the things you can't finance with debt is deferred maintenance. And that's where one of our problems is that we want to use our operating capital to do deferred maintenance. And we don't want our facilities to fall into significant disrepair. So we don't want to use debt financing for that. The debt financing is typically for new buildings or additions or major renovations, but the deferred maintenance we have to use our operating for.
And can I just jump in very quickly before you go to the next question? I'm watching the comments here, and I feel terrible because it sounds like I might have implied that, or it sounded like I was implying that LEC 1s and 2s are easily replaceable, and that was not my intent at all. All our lecturers are valued and give value. It was the nature. The question was more about, do you get rid of a LEC 3 and 4 because the LEC 1 is cheaper, and I think that's insulting to everyone involved. So I apologize for that, though.
Thanks, Sue. Sorry. Let me, this is hard. Questions are coming in too fast.
Yeah, really good questions here.
It is. So will extracurricular and co-curricular programs will they receive funding this year? Sue, maybe you, it's under.
I would say that they haven't really been specifically identified in regards to budgets yet, but I think as reductions are made in other areas, I think we have to take these programs, in line with our the rest of our thinking. I would just remind folks, though, that given our current thinking, as we talked about in the last town hall, the current thinking regarding the likely limitations of our campus presence, I think much programming will just continue to remain online.
Jeff, maybe this one's for you. Will the canceled construction projects require reapproval, and when would you say they could potentially start? For example, the CB active learning classroom and the SSB lobby renovation.
Thank you. That actually, the Castle and the SSB are two that are on hold indefinitely. As we talked in the previous town hall and also on campus messages, we put a stop to all construction. So we're going to be carefully reviewing our plan in the coming months. I would expect that new projects will not be approved as we move forward. We know ELB restarted, and the projects that have just a little bit left to go when we can, per the governor's order, we'll finish those, but it's really the new projects that are at risk. So we'll have to reevaluate, and it's hard. Domenico talked about deferred maintenance. For every dollar that we don't spend on deferred maintenance, it can be multiplied, 4 or 10 times within a few years. So we're going to be very, very carefully analyzing the deferred maintenance separate from the projects. And we'll share updated timelines. Right now, there's approximately 30 projects totaling about $7 million outside of ELB, and we'll be reevaluating those as well.
I do want to just make one more comment to Jeff's, following on all these, is that the presentation that I did with all the numbers are going to be posted. So because I've seen a lot of questions about numbers here, and you don't have to worry about writing them down. We're going to post the whole presentation so you can go through it at your leisure. And I do want to just answer one question. No reserves are used and no one-time funds are used to balance the budget. We're balancing the budget based on our cash flows, and this is why we're having, and that's the only way you can do it sustainably, unless you see a short-term shortfall. So this is why we're trying to figure out what the best approach going forward is.
Thank you. Question about tuition. Given the economic uncertainty, does the university intend to ask for a tuition increase in the coming year? A lot of peer institutions have announced they're freezing. Do we want to comment about that process? I know it's a regental decision.
Yeah, I would say that we're speaking to the regents about what our position will be on that, and what is in the best interest of both the university, the students, and the state. So the regents and the leadership are talking about that.
Melissa, this one might be for you. And there continues to be, there's a lot of questions about the CARES Act. I know this came up at the last town hall, but maybe worth a refresher. If you can maybe just talk a little bit about CARES funding, how it's utilized. And then this particular question said they read about the HEROES Act. Will most likely pass in a modified form. How will funds from the second stimulus impact our campus?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to the part we know. I mean, as we know with the feds right now, the guidance we get sort of trickles in. So on the first part that we got, which was related to the student-specific funding, we did receive an allocation about $3.5 million. The financial aid team is working diligently on getting those out to students as they submit an application based on need. I can report as of yesterday, we have over 1,000 students have received funding. A total of 1.1 million of that 3.5 has been dispersed. The second portion of the 3.5, there has been cross-campus collaboration in identifying the best use of those. The guidance we got initially was related to online and remote delivery of instruction, getting the campus in a better position to do that. Sue may want to weigh in, but I can just say that we're essentially waiting on final guidance just to make sure, because we saw with the student side of things that when we got initial guidance, more came out later. So I think as a campus, we just want to make sure before we commit that we have a full sense of that guidance. And so I think that the university is trying to be very strategic about all of this funding and what we can use it for within the guidance that's been given. Some of it is more structured in what we can use it for, and so we have to work around those regulations as they come through.
And I don't think, we don't really have any information on the HEROES Act, so. We
Not yet. So
Okay.
we'll continue to monitor to see what we can do as we get more information on that one.
A question about buyouts for faculty and staff that may be close to retirement. Are we thinking about offering those programs or that program?
Madam Provost?
I think we're considering a wide range of options, and I think that is definitely one of them. I know that Castle was doing some activity in that area already. I would, I think right at this moment, we've kind of got a list of possible things that we could do, and I think we're going to have to deploy. It's not going to be one silver bullet's going to fix this. We're going to have to think very broadly and about various options, and I think that should be one on the table.
So I would like to just address a couple of things that I've seen questions here on. One question was, how could they anonymously make suggestions? I think that we will set up a website for that to happen, right, Ken? We can do that.
Yeah, that one caught my attention too. I would just say, email me. I won't say who you are when I pass that on to Domenico. We'll take a look at that for sure. There's questions in here about our fall plan. I know at the last town hall, we talked about the timing for that approaching very soon. Sue, maybe I'll kick that one over to you. I know a lot of people want to know, and
we're in the final stages of myself, Laura Jabchek, the entire emergency operating center teams. We just this last Wednesday, we had a big sit down, and all the various working groups that we spoke of got together and presented, and now we're sort of pulling it together, integrating things, and we're going to present the chancellor with a recommendation for the fall tomorrow. End of business. End of business. Need every and then so I think we'll more soon, very soon.
And just to let you know what the process will be, after I get the recommendations and we make a collaborative decision on this, I will take it to the COVID leadership team in Ann Arbor that comprises Ann Arbor leadership and leadership from the two campuses. Then it will go to the president, and then it will go to the regents. So there are still some steps to go, but I have to say, we targeted the 28th of May back in, I think, at the end of April as a point where we wanted to make a decision by. And Sue and her team and Laura Drabchuk did a terrific job of hitting that nail right on the head. So we're right on target for where we wanted to be.
Yeah, and then if I could just add on too, my team's working closely with the communications folks in Ann Arbor, and it'll probably be a 3-campus coordinated message about remote instruction or hybrid or whatever model is selected. So we're probably about within 30 days, from sharing that information. Jeff, this question may be for you. How will we manage new COVID-related expenses in the fall?
Thanks. Make sure I'm off mute. So we know that there's certain things in the fall, like PPE, personal protective equipment, and also remote delivery of instruction that we are going to try to have covered by COVID. To date, the PPE expenses have been pretty minimal. And so as we get into the fall, once we know what our fall model is, it will help drive some of the stuff that can be covered by CARES, especially on the instructional side. And as Melissa said, there's these 2 buckets that we have for the students and then for the other bucket. And then there's a FEMA amount too. So we're also working hard to have some of the PPE and other things applied to FEMA. And it's like many things, we're going to have to report out as soon as we can, probably starting in July for FY20. And then to your question, we'll know more towards the fall what we think we can cover in the other bucket.
And Ken, I just wanted to make a couple of comments.
No, go ahead. You're the
First,
boss.
there were a couple, I'm just scanning the questions. So I want to make sure we get to as many as we can. So one was about leases. And I had asked Jeff, and Jeff went to every place that we had leases and asked for relief or reductions in our leases. And some were more accommodating than others, but we're working towards reducing our off-campus exposure in terms of leases where we can do things on campus and save ourselves money. So we're working on the leases. Another was a question of, are we exploiting our online capacity to do for revenue generation? And the answer to that is we are exploiting every possible that we can find to do revenue generation. So if we can do online courses to people that are remote overseas, that will take as much advantage of that as possible. And the third was, are we independent of Ann Arbor in terms of our decisions around athletics? And absolutely, we're going to make our own decisions around athletics. And Ann Arbor has got some really tough decisions around athletics. And I do not envy Ward Manuel. He's a super smart guy and very thoughtful, but he's got some big challenges ahead of him.
Yeah, and then just to add on to athletics, there were some questions about what does the fall and the season look like. I think we're waiting on the university decision of what our remote class, what the class schedule will look like. And then athletics will fall under that as well. This one's interesting. I don't think it's happening, but I think a lot of people think that our carbon footprint has been reduced with all of us working remotely. Have there been any, is there a study underway to see, what exactly we have reduced, and are there any federal grants to encourage this behavior?
Well, I do know, speaking to my wife just recently, that deaths on highways in Ann Arbor have been reduced significantly during this crisis. So that is a terrific outcome of what's happened in Michigan. I presume, and I don't know what the statistics are, that our carbon footprint has been decreased significantly.
Yeah.
And in addition, there have been reports in the BBC that the environment has rebounded in many areas because of our pause on industrialization. So I think that there have been a lot of things that we've learned from this. I hope that people can see the connection between this and our commitment to climate change going forward, and they see what we really can do if we commit our minds to it.
I also want to add, it'd be remiss not to remind everyone what's been in the reporter about the DTE Energy Challenge. You have to credit both Dean Tony England and Executive Director Carol Glick in Facilities for taking the lead and getting a whole bunch of students, and we've submitted and we'll hopefully win the grant. So we have resources to further energy savings on campus. So stay tuned.
So we are 2 minutes over. Can I ask all the panelists just to do a quick scan of the questions that are coming in? I know we've all been doing that. If there's anything that you feel we haven't addressed that we should, we should do that. Thank you all. The questions are great.
Yeah, these
as
are great. These are wonderful questions. Can I speak to the assistant professors? There have been a couple questions about that. We are not looking to make cuts to our current tenure track faculty positions. Nothing is changing regarding the tenure process. You'll remember that back a million years ago in March, we offered assistant professors on campus the option to extend their tenure clock by a year because of the disruption to research productivity, and many people took us up on that. The deans and I have been in discussions about how to help assistant professors and keep them on schedule as best we can. And I would just say to all of you that you should feel, well, everyone on this call, but you should feel free to reach out to the deans, to other senior colleagues, and to me if we can help. Being an assistant professor on the tenure track is tough enough as it is without all this. So we want to do what we can to support you.
And I just want to add one thing. I know I talked about uncertainties, and there are a lot of things that are uncertain about the future, but one thing that I am certain about is that we have got the right people to help us get through this. We've got a terrific faculty and staff and a terrific student body. And if any school can get through this healthy, happy, and successfully, it is UM-Dearborn.
Thank you. Great. I do, some of the questions that we didn't get to, I encourage you to reach out to your supervisor, your dean, or send one of the administrators an email. Again, thank you for the questions. This is recorded, as we mentioned. We'll be able to get this up on the COVID-19 website very soon, and we'll put a communication out to the campus letting people know it's there. I also, again, want to thank the IT team for making all of this possible. Thank you. We can't do it without you. And panelists, anything else you want to say before we sign off? I know we're a little bit over, and I'm watching our numbers drop on the people that are hanging with us. So Melissa, Sue, Jeff, Domenico.
Yeah, I'll just say, are some of these, I mean, we can do like we did the last time where we give responses, because I know some people are asking some stuff about enrollment. I'll just say that we are obviously continuing to monitor very closely both returning enrollment and new student enrollment. As everyone's mentioned, even in some of the questions, I'm sure you realize that, some of it is trying to predict behavior on what students will do when we do announce what the fall is going to look like. So what I can just encourage everyone is there's a very collaborative exercise that we're going to be doing to reach out to students to make sure that they understand what it means once we make a formal decision. One of the things I've said, I think it's what's most important is not just what decision we make, but how we message it to the students and how they feel comfortable with what decision we've made and why. So I can just encourage everyone that there will be a cross collaboration across campus to try to make students aware, both new students and current students, of what that'll look like as these decisions are rolled out.
Yeah, the one question I'll address, there was a question about advocating the state to lessen the cuts if there's going to be cuts. The chancellor and I were on a call with some elected officials just last week. There's a lot of uncertainty in what their targets are going to be. There's just a lot of uncertainty, period, because of the figures that the chancellor shared. I mean, I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't think there'd be across the board cuts in all departments at the state. So I know we're working closely with MASU. All of us on this call are on various committees with MASU, and that work will continue. But certainly, advocating for our share of the state allocations is important.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all. This seems to be a very popular format, means of communication, so we'll continue that for sure, and watch for the news about the next one in the coming weeks.
Ken, thank you for moderating. And
Good job.
Lou, Jeff, Melissa, thank you all very, very much. Go Blue, go Dearborn.
Go Blue.
Have a great rest of the week.
Bye, everyone.